Hello from San Francisco. My name is Brian Madden, and with me, as always, Gabe Knuth.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Hello, and we've got Peter Smith from
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so what we're doing is this project that we talked about on a podcast with you like 2 months ago.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Where Infinio, so you make software that accelerates storage, and specifically storage for VDI. And it's all software, and I think on the podcast you had said something like, oh, we can take an old NAS and make even an old NAS be awesome.
Did you say that or did we say that? I don't remember. Either way, it morphed into this big project now where we actually are going to do that. We're just going to take any old storage system that we can find, and we're going to try to optimize it with Infinio software.
Sounds like fun.
So here's our plan for the next couple days. We want you to tell us like the bare minimum, oldest, crappiest NAS that your software could work with. And then Gabe and I are going to go out and find this box, and then we're going to bring it back into the lab, and then we're going to do VDI testing. And we want to do we'll use login VSI and see like how many sessions we can get on this old crappy NAS without Infinio. Then we'll install the Infinio software, and then we'll run the test again and see like how much faster they run. So we're going to get in the lab and like go over the details of exactly how Infinio works. But right now, Gabe,
we got to find some storage.
Yeah. So I want to go. There's this place called Weird Stuff Warehouse. It's in Santa Clara. Have you heard of Weird Stuff?
No, never.
So this is, it's like this computer graveyard, scrapyard kind of place, and it's been there for like 40 years. It's kind of a Bay Area institution. They have like craziest, oldest, who knows what hardware. So
they've got to have something. I mean, I can go there if I want a token ring Mao. I should be able to find some old storage.
Yeah, and it's a trip down memory lane when you're there. So Gabe and I are going to go down there, but I don't know what we're looking for. So Infinio, I know you accelerate storage for NAS devices, right?
NAS, yes.
So we're looking for a NAS. Okay.
Yeah, something that has NFS support, and I could see something like maybe a 12-disk array or something like that. We don't want to go too small. We want to be representative of something you might find in a small mid-market or SMB, but not something like a sort of a home storage system. That would be a little too small.
So no Drobo
Terra stations.
I was just gonna say, yeah, no Drobo, no Buffalo. All right,
no problem.
We will go find that, and we'll give you a call back when we get it.
Okay,
and let's actually run this test. Cool.
All right.
True. Hey, we worked for these guys, for Aeronet.
So this is Nortel before it was Nortel, like Northern Telecom.
BitSurfer Pro. It came from the lunar module. This is the inside of an iPhone.
I had this pager.
Dude, check it out.
Hang on.
So, 1,000 gigabytes, so with terabyte drives.
Oh man, this is
Old NetApp.
This is perfect.
It's got interfaces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's a NAS and everything.
Yep. 12 drives.
Huh.
Yup.
Man, this seems like brand new here. You okay? You got it? Here.
You got it? Yeah. So that sticker says 67 pounds. All right, through the magic of editing, we're now in our conference room converted into test lab.
Yeah.
And
We've made a trip. We've picked out our hardware, and we're going to try to break this thing.
So we've got our old storage appliance here. And Peter, you brought with you these couple Mac Pros we're using for our testing.
Yeah, 2 Mac Pros, 128 gigs each, running ESX 5.1, connected via a 1 gig sort of dumb switch here. We've got a little home quality dumb switch.
And so the idea is, we talked about, we want to run 2 tests essentially. So we're going to have VMware View using Login VSI, and we're going to spin up a whole bunch of desktops without using the Infinio software.
Right.
And
exactly.
And then run that and get a benchmark, and then push the button. It's literally just think and turn on Infinio, and then run the test again and see what it does.
You got it.
But I think what I want to do before we actually dig into this and power it up, I want to go to the whiteboard, which is conveniently right over here. And let's talk about architecture a little bit. We did that hour-long podcast with you a few months ago, I referred to earlier, where I'll link to that, and then we can see that if people want to get the details. But give me a 2-minute version, assuming I've never heard of Infinio. Show me what Infinio does and how it works.
Sure, happy to. So Infinio is software only. It's a distributed storage acceleration layer. And really what that means is that we leverage memory and CPU from 2 ESX hosts and bandwidth across the vMotion network. And those 2 ESX hosts work together to offload I/O from an underlying NFS storage system. So if you've got a VM here, VM1, you've got a VM here, VM2, on 2 ESX hosts, and a request is made to storage from VM1 for a given piece of content, and the same piece of content is requested for VM2. Now, 2 totally different addresses.
This is block level, right?
Yeah, block level, 4K
yeah.
block.
Yeah.
Our software sitting down here, this is Infinio, it recognizes the fact that you just requested the exact same content, despite it being at 2 different addresses.
And 2 different hosts also, they recognize.
2 different hosts, yep, precisely. And our software will actually fetch the cached block wherever it exists in the cluster. So to that extent, it's actually distributed software running over the network between hosts, leveraging CPU and memory.
And because the cache is in memory here. So essentially,
memory,
instead of going back to those slow NFS off a magnetic disk to pull it out, it's going to pull it out of memory of this other host. And I think you're using, was it 8 gigs?
8 gigs per host.
Yeah.
It's resizable now as of our most recent release.
Since our podcast, even.
Yeah, since our
cool.
podcast, exactly. So we're actually going to resize it to 16 gigs. Typically, we would install this in 2, 3-node or larger clusters, and so we'll resize it to 16 gigs and run the workloads and see what happens.
And that's how we came up with this whole thing to begin with, was saying, hey, if we're just pulling it out of the memory here and we never have to go to this, we can just get any old piece of storage and give it a shot. So what we found was 5 years old. A 5-year-old NAS.
So the first test is like this, and obviously every request is going to be going to NFS.
Right.
So I want to grab a coffee, and then let's fire this thing up and do our first test.
Sounds good.
Awesome.
Guys.
What's up? I don't like the sound of that.
Yeah.
So there's no serial port on here. There's an RJ45 serial connection, but there's no actual DB9 serial connection.
There's no serial connection on this either. So I guess we have a problem, right? We need some cables.
Yeah. So we need to make the cable to adapt the DB9 to RJ45.
All right, and then we also need a USB to DB9.
Yeah.
All right, so Radio Shack.
Does Radio Shack even have that?
I guess
I'm
we'll find
sure
out.
they do. Let's go find out.
All right, off to Radio Shack then. Okay, 2 Radio Shacks. This is a GigaWare 6-foot USB-A to serial cable.
Okay, this is halfway there.
DB9
What?
mini connector.
They didn't have
Soldering iron.
Radio Shack didn't have the
Solder. Nah. And Gabe, since you like to do everything right, the housing so we can make this look beautiful. Okay, here goes.
It keeps getting louder.
Looking good.
Yeah?
Sounding good.
We're in.
Nice.
Oh, sweet.
Well, hello on day 2. You might notice we can't hide it, we're wearing different clothes. So we were here till after midnight last night.
Yeah.
And what we learned basically was when we tried to do the first test without Infinio, this 5-year-old storage system just crashed to its knees so badly, it broke everything that we had planned.
We discovered that at least part of the reason, maybe the entire reason, was that we had all of our infrastructure, all of our VMs on that storage, and so Peter figured that out, and we had to move off our supporting infrastructure.
Yeah, we segmented out vCenter and any VMware View and all of that stuff onto local disk. So this is only running workload.
Yeah, which is frankly probably more typical to how it would be in VDI environments anyway, because
That's what we tell people to do.
Yeah.
We always say keep separate storage for your desktops than you would for the rest of your server virtualization.
Yeah, and so now we have proof that you should do that. So we're going to run our tests now. I think we might change the order of how we actually do the tests. Like, let's do the Infinio with Infinio first, since we know. Well, we haven't actually done it yet. We assume that one's going to not
Just in
destroy
case
this
it breaks
thing.
again.
Right.
And then we can do some others,
exactly.
and then we'll do some tests. So
Yeah, we can do some Bootstorm tests, stuff like that as
yeah,
well.
yeah. So I think we're about ready to kick off some tests. Okay, so for this test, this is the test where we're going to do launching a bunch of VDI sessions with Infinio enabled. And give a quick tour of these consoles that we have here.
Sure. So this is vCenter, as you know, and what we'll be looking at is storage latency, particularly the read latency, as well as IOPS. Over here, we have Login VSI, which will be running 66 virtual desktops on these 2 Macs here. The launch window will be approximately 5 minutes, and we'll be launching at a login rate of 6 per minute. So over here, this is the Infinio console. You can see, given that we're a deduplicated memory-based caching solution, you can see at the bottom here, this is the effective cache size, which is more or less the deduplication rate within our cache, currently at 4.9x physical memory. And then this is overall offload rate, the number of physical disks equivalent that were offloaded.
That's a fun.
It is kind of funny,
graphic, yeah.
considering that since we've been getting this stuff set up, like powering VMs on and all that stuff, Infinio's been running, and it's been offloading 25 disks, and the storage system only has 12.
So it's like we have 3 of these.
Yes,
really.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then we're going to measure response time improvement as a multiplier. So currently backend latency is, or over the last hour, backend latency has been 32 milliseconds, and with Infinio it's been 5.3 milliseconds. And then requests offloaded is just a measure of IOPS, and bandwidth saved is really just how much bandwidth was not needed on the storage network as a result of Infinio.
Oh, this is like actual NFS bandwidth because it's already on. It's already in the VMware
it's in the
host,
chassis.
so you don't even need to. I didn't even think about that. It's a thing, but yeah.
So yeah, we can kick the test off. Feel free.
All right. So our test is underway. If we look here on the Login VSI management console, so if you haven't used Login VSI, there's a camera. So if you haven't used Login VSI, it's tracking how many sessions it has launched, which is sort of testing. That's actually logging in sessions, and then active sessions is sessions where your script is actually running.
Exactly.
So we can test 2 things really. So you can test like boot storms, or well, I guess boot/login.
Yeah,
storms.
login storms. Yep. Yeah, you can change your rate of logins.
So you can have like I can log in a whole bunch of them, and then actually kick off the test, which runs through and does all the actual work in them. So right now we've got 15 sessions that have been connected and launched and logged in, and 7 of them have actually started running the test scripts. Is there anything, if we go back to the Infinio console, can we see if it's doing anything here now?
Yeah, we can. This is measuring response time with and without Infinio. The perspective here is that with Infinio shows you the blended latency. That includes cache hits as well as cache misses. Without Infinio is the latency of cache misses alone. So what you can see in this screenshot, or rather this console, is that the gray line is sort of spiky. You can see here back-end latency had a spike up to 86.1 milliseconds, but with Infinio, even averaging in that 86.1 milliseconds, as well as the cache hit rate, it brought the average down to 20 milliseconds. Here again, you see that the backend spiked to 74.7 milliseconds. We averaged it out to 17. And it's worth repeating that 17 milliseconds is the average of cache hit latency, which is typically around 1 millisecond, as well as the 74.7 milliseconds.
So that includes your cache, like the penalty of your cache, essentially, is sort of included in
the lift of the cache, as well as the penalty of a cache miss.
Yeah.
And then you can go down to the bottom and see what the offload rate is. So it's offloading 96% of the requests. You can see down here it dipped down to 83% of the requests offloaded. And then in the bandwidth saved, it's around 300 megabits per second on this gigabit Ethernet network we're using. So it's got a pretty good sustained offload rate, I'd say.
And that bandwidth saved is due to the fact that
we don't have to come off of primary storage because the stuff is stored.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's already on the server. So like they're just talking to, and in this case, it's all on the same network, but in a real environment, it might these servers are right there next to each other, and the storage is over there.
Right.
In this particular case, we have vMotion network, and that's what we use for our peer-to-peer connectivity.
Oh,
it just turns out that the peer-to-peer network is also on the same physical network,
and
as
that's probably on a 10 gig or something in real life.
It can be 1 gig. It doesn't really matter. Really, just the point is that our peer-to-peer traffic does not ride over the storage network.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So
yep. Okay. So this test is complete. So let's set up to run another test, and then we'll analyze this in a bit. We're getting ready to run the same test we just ran before, 66 VMs, but we're going to do it with no Infinio. So the first thing we have to do, and see if flames come out of this, or like shards of disk, or who knows what happens. But the first part of this, of course, is we actually have to remove Infinio.
Sure.
Which we
let's do it. Single click. There's your button.
Disable acceleration. Boop.
Done. I kind of feel like we need a confirmation dialog.
And then we can. So it's done.
Wow.
By the way.
Yeah, that was real. That was like 5 seconds.
And then we can confirm right here. Yep, it's out. All right, so we have 9 seconds left.
Will we get
We're
21?
up to 20 active.
That's weird. It locked off 8 seconds.
Oh yeah.
It just ended.
Yep.
It's like, you know what, guys? I can't do anymore.
All right, we're done with all of our tests.
Finally.
So
2 days.
2 days.
Which I think before we started this, I was thinking, oh, we're in and out in half a day. I didn't really appreciate just how much our world had progressed since 5-year-old storage was a thing.
Yeah, great point.
Especially with modern, like as many VDI. I mean, look at what we were doing 5 years ago with the numbers of VDI sessions and all that kind of stuff. So we were throwing a 2014 environment onto 2009 storage. But I just want to look at some of the results. So looking first, so the number of active sessions. Now our login VSI test, it always logged in 66 sessions, but remember it only was able to actually activate and start up a certain number of sessions. So when we were using, without Infinio, we got 20 of those sessions. They were able to start their scripts.
And it's worth noting that's 20 within the 6-minute test window that we allotted. Had we let it go longer, we don't know what the end result would have been.
But within 6 minutes and 66 people trying to log in at once, really only 20 were actually able to start their work. And then when we enabled Infinio, that number jumped to 39. So this is again, by the way, we still have 5-year-old storage, so it's sort of expected that we
do not try this at home anyway, but we doubled it.
The max latency, so this is the milliseconds latency from the storage that we had, and it was spiking all over the place, but we had a max without Infinio of 203 milliseconds. And then when we enabled Infinio, we saw our max drop down to 65 milliseconds, which, again, 65 is not great, to be clear. But
yeah, again, because it's the old hardware. But what we're looking at here, we're looking at the delta. We're looking at the difference between with Infinio and without, and it's a huge, huge difference. And I think 203 milliseconds. Think of that if you're a user. I mean, that's a noticeable, reportable thing. You know, the user could actually call the help desk, and they wouldn't just say, "My desktop is behaving weird," or like it's slow. You could actually point out, "Hey,
they would say it's
this
unusable.
is happening." Yeah.
And this is not user interaction time, because this is every single process, every single thing that's running, every copy of Word, email, send, all that stuff is having that delay as it's going down. The cache hit rate, well, without Infinio, there was no cache. That's not applicable.
Didn't have Infinio.
But we saw 80 to 90% with Infinio cache hit rate. And this means this was where, so as we did in the architecture yesterday, this is where when one of the VDI sessions was trying to read from disk, Infinio had it in its cache on one of those VM hosts, and it didn't actually have to go across to the storage system. So we basically offloaded, 4 out of every 5 read requests from the storage were handled without touching storage at all, which is what enables, I think, these numbers up
precisely.
And we don't have it there, but we also then don't have the network hit associated with that as well.
The implication is that by doing 39 as opposed to 20, we did more work in the same amount of time, IOPS. Going from 65 versus 203, it means that the 1 out of every 5 that didn't get hit by the cache experienced significant latency on the back end to bring the average up to 65. The cache hit rate is those requests were, 5 milliseconds or less. And then all of the ones that were missed brought the average way up to 65.
Oh yeah, so when it actually hit, it could have been super high in the hundreds or whatever. And then the last metric that we tracked, did our data store explode? As we saw when we ran without. Without Infinio, we have, yes, our data store exploded.
and it exploded twice. It exploded during the provisioning process, right?
Yeah.
And we actually installed Infinio just to get through the provisioning process. And then it exploded when we did the reset on our VDI environment.
And when
we would not have been able to do this test today without Infinio involved, just to the software involved just to get everything set up. And then we had to turn it off to do our test.
Just to reset the test.
Which is so funny because the storage was so painful. We had to use Infinio to set up the storage. So I guess did our data store explode without Infinio?
With Infinio,
Sorry, with Infinio, no, it did not explode. So overall, success in that we had fun.
We definitely had fun.
This is great that we actually took this idea from the podcast we were on and said, what would be cool is to find the oldest storage we could find.
Yeah, to be clear, we're not taking this seriously. We're not saying you can take your 5-year-old hardware and load this on there and quadruple your capacity or your performance. Well, you could, but you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Please don't use that for your actual VDI environment. But we got to get down to Weird Stuff Warehouse, which is always fun.
Yeah.
The big question for me though is, do you want that, Nas? Can you take that home with you?
You know what? It might get lost on the flight back to the East Coast.
So instead of actually packing it in a box, just put the sticker on the actual hardware itself on the plane.
And then claim it as a loss to the baggage department.
Perfect.
And they'll laugh at you and say, that's a 5-year-old NAS. It's not worth anything.
the baggage handler will know that's not. Yeah. So this is a blast. Peter Smith, product management head for Infinio.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for making the trip out here. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Gabe, as always, thank you for coming out.
That was a blast.
And to you, thank you so much for watching this. Justin behind the camera, thank you for doing all this. Mariah, our project manager, thank you for making all this happen. And it was good fun. I look forward to more fun, crazy tests like this in the future.
Awesome.